beneath the Earth's crust. Heat and pressure built over tens of millions of years, warping and fracturing the rigid plates that held the continents together. Magma surged upward through deep fissures, forming vast volcanic provinces that spilled lava across hundreds of thousands of square kilometers. The Central Atlantic Magmatic Province, one of the largest volcanic events in Earth's history, left behind scars still visible today. Its eruptions marked the beginning of the end for Pangaea and the dawn of the Jurassic. The supercontinent began to tear along what would eventually become the Atlantic Ocean. North America drifted westward, Africa and South America pulled apart, and the Tethys Sea expanded between the northern and southern landmasses. This slow continental drift, measured in centimeters per year, created vast rift valleys, new coastlines, and isolated inland seas. Land that had once been unified and stable was now fragmented, with oceans and deserts emerging between what were once neighboring ecosystems. The climate responded. As Pangaea broke apart, the global climate began to shift from extreme and seasonal to more varied and regional. Air masses flowed differently. Rain fell where it had once failed to reach. Deserts began to shrink. New monsoon systems developed near the coasts. Lush tropical forests replaced dry interiors. Humidity rose in many regions, feeding the growth of plant life and opening up new habitats for herbivores and their predators. Ecosystems diversified, and so did the dinosaurs within them. With the fragmentation of land came the fragmentation of populations. Species once connected across continents became isolated. This geographic isolation was a powerful force in evolution. Populations adapted to their new surroundings, evolving separately from their cousins on other landmasses. Over time, new species formed, each uniquely suited to their region. This is how nature builds variety, not in stillness, but in movement, not in sameness, but in separation. In what is now North America, new sauropods began to evolve. Long-necked giants like Apatosaurus and Camarasaurus would one day dominate the open plains. In Africa, a different branch of sauropods, like Volcanodon, emerged. In Asia, early stegosaurs and armored species began to take form. And across the spreading landmasses, theropods adapted into countless shapes, some growing larger, others more agile, and still others more intelligent. This explosion of diversity was directly tied to the geography of a world breaking itself apart. The oceans, too, were changing. As the continents drifted, shallow seas flooded inland, creating vast coastal habitats teeming with life. Coral reefs expanded. New marine reptiles emerged to take advantage of the growing abundance. Plesiosaurs glided through the water with long necks and flippered limbs. Ichthyosaurs, shaped like sleek fish, darted through schools of prey. The sea became a new frontier, and evolution answered the call. Volcanic activity continued to shape the Earth. Lava fields blanketed huge areas. Ash and gases filled the skies, sometimes cooling the planet temporarily, other times warming it. These climatic fluctuations, while devastating in the short term, fueled evolutionary pressure. Species had to adapt quickly or disappear. Those that could not handle the changing temperatures, shifting coastlines, or unpredictable rainfall patterns were lost to time. Those that could, the adaptable, the mobile, the efficient, flourished. The breakup of Pangaea also reshaped migration. Dinosaurs that once traveled across a single continent now faced physical barriers. Rivers widened, seas emerged, mountain ranges rose from tectonic collisions. Migration routes became more complex and in some cases impossible. This limited gene flow between Over time, the biosphere became a mosaic of highly specialized creatures. Not all changes were dramatic. Some were subtle, unfolding over millions of years, but the direction was clear. Unity was giving way to diversity. The old world of Pangaea, flat, hot, uniform, was being replaced by a new world of complexity. With it came the opportunity for new behaviors, new relationships, new ways of living. This fragmentation even influenced behavior. Herding, for example, became more common as predators grew larger and more coordinated. In fragmented landscapes, safety in numbers offered protection against ambush. Nesting behaviors began to shift as well, with evidence suggesting more communal nesting sites and perhaps even primitive forms of parental care. As environments became more diverse, so did social structures. And while the dinosaurs rose in power and variety, small mammals continued to evolve quietly in the underbrush. They scurried through ferns and beneath roots, avoiding the giants above, though they would not dominate for many millions of years. Their evolutionary foundation was being shaped in this same dynamic world. The shattered Pangaea affected all life, great and small. As the Jurassic period began, Earth had become a planet of motion and transformation. Continents drifted steadily toward their modern positions. Climates cooled and warmed, forests expanded and contracted, mountains rose, seas deepened, and everywhere life followed. Dinosaurs walked new paths across strange new lands, each one a branch of a tree that would grow to fill every niche available. What had once been a single, colossal landmass was now a collection of evolving worlds, each with its own rhythm and rules. This was the legacy of a shattered Pangaea. Not destruction, but diversification. Not collapse, but creation. And in the cracks of this broken continent, life found new ways to thrive. They rose slowly, silently, but with purpose. Towering shadows drifting across floodplains, necks reaching above the treetops, tails sweeping through ancient ferns, their feet pressed deep into the mud, shaping the land with every step. They were the sauropods, the largest creatures to ever walk the earth. But their rise was not sudden. It was the result of millions of years of adaptation, driven by hunger, movement, and the relentless pull of evolution. They were not born giants, they became giants. The early Jurassic was a world of opportunity. With Pangaea breaking apart and climates becoming more humid and stable, vast new ecosystems opened up. Dense forests, river deltas, and coastal plains created a mosaic of plant-rich environments. For a creature that fed constantly, this was paradise. The first true sauropods emerged from their smaller ancestors, the sauropodomorphs, and began to explore this expanding buffet. Volcanodon was among the earliest. Though modest by later standards, it displayed the foundational traits of sauropods: column-like legs, an elongated neck, and a shift toward obligate quadrupedalism. It was no longer built to rise on two legs like its ancestors. Its size demanded a new posture. Walking on all fours provided stability, massive limbs supported its growing weight, and its neck gave it access to a wide feeding range without the need to move its entire body. This was the beginning of a revolution in herbivory. The neck was a marvel of biological engineering. Flexible, powerful, and often longer than the rest of the body, it allowed sauropods to feed high in the canopy or sweep low across the ground, depending on the species. It meant less energy spent walking, more energy gained from feeding. And unlike giraffes, whose necks are constrained by blood pressure and vertebral count, sauropods developed additional cervical vertebrae and air-filled bones that reduced weight without sacrificing strength. Their entire bodies were designed around efficiency and scale. Sauropods also possessed an unusually effective respiratory system. Like birds, their lungs were connected to a system of air sacs that extended into the bones. This allowed for a unidirectional flow of air, improving oxygen exchange and supporting the demands of such massive bodies. Their metabolism, while still debated, likely balanced energy conservation with growth, allowing juveniles to reach immense sizes in relatively short spans of time. Rapid growth meant less time vulnerable to predators. It also meant greater feeding demands, which these landscapes could now provide. They did not feed alone. Sauropods lived and moved in herds, sometimes dozens or even hundreds strong. Fossilized trackways in Argentina, Portugal, and the United States reveal parallel footprints, consistent stride lengths, and spacing that suggests coordinated movement. They offered protection for the young, and perhaps even social bonds among adults. Their movements shaped the land. They trampled ferns into open meadows. Their droppings fertilized the soil. They were ecosystem engineers long before the term existed. And predators took notice. The rise of sauropods created a ripple effect in evolution. To hunt something so massive, carnivores had to adapt. Early theropods began to grow larger, stronger, more coordinated. But even at their most powerful, few predators dared take on a healthy adult sauropod. Their size alone was defense. It was the juveniles, the sick, the isolated, that drew attention. And so sauropods developed strategies to protect their own, tied herding, coordinated movement, perhaps even vocal communication. They spread across the world. Wherever there was plant life and room to move, sauropods arrived. Mamenchisaurus appeared in Asia, with a neck stretching over 15 meters. Cetiosaurus, the so-called whale lizard, lived in the rivers and floodplains of Europe. In Africa, Jobaria wandered the open plains. South America hosted a growing variety of forms, including the early ancestors of the titanosaurs, who would one day dominate the Cretaceous. Their success was not due to aggression or speed, but persistence. They did not need to hunt. They needed only to feed and grow. They were creatures of rhythm. They followed seasonal rains, moving between dry and wet habitats. They remembered water sources and returned to them year after year. They migrated in search of fresh vegetation, carving ancient paths into the land. Their lives were shaped by slow cycles of growth, of movement, of reproduction. A single individual might live for decades, watching the world shift around them. Yet for all their size and power, they were vulnerable. Eggs laid in shallow nests could be destroyed by floods or trampled by other animals. Juveniles, even the size of cows, were still targets. A broken leg could mean death. A drought could force a herd into starvation. Being large came with a cost. They survived by minimizing risk, not eliminating it. Still, they endured. Their bones, scattered across the globe, tell a story of quiet dominance, of animals who did not need to chase or flee, who shaped the world simply by existing. They were the living pulse of the Jurassic landscape, steady and unrelenting. The rise of sauropods marked a turning point in the age of dinosaurs. It proved that size could be a strategy, that slow and steady could triumph over fast and fierce. It opened the door for later giants, the Seismosaurus, the Argentinosaurus, the Brachiosaurus, creatures so immense they defied imagination. But it began here, with the early steps of a few long-necked grazers in a world freshly broken and blooming with life. In the shattered remnants of Pangaea, the sauropods rose, and the world rose with them. As the herds of sauropods grew larger and more dominant, their presence rewrote the laws of survival. They reshaped the land, drew lines of migration across entire continents, and transformed once diverse habitats into vast feeding grounds. But in their shadow, something else was evolving. Something leaner, sharper, faster. For waited nearby, adapting, refining, learning. This was the era of the new hunters, a rising class of theropods that would redefine what it meant to kill in the Jurassic world. The decline of the old apex predators had left a void. The Rauisuchians, once the top predators of the Triassic, had vanished. Their downfall came not from battle, but from time and change. Their massive bodies, slow development, and limited adaptability had doomed them when the world shifted. And into that opening, theropods had already begun to step. Now, in the early Jurassic, they took control. Among the first to emerge was Dilophosaurus. With its slender build, long legs, and distinctive twin crests atop its skull, it was a predator made for speed and agility. It measured over 6 meters in length, but weighed far less than its size might suggest. Its body was hollow-boned and lightweight. Its jaws were long and flexible, lined with sharp, curved teeth capable of slicing flesh. Dilophosaurus was not a brute force killer. It was a strategist. It hunted with precision, relying on stealth, speed, and timing. Dilophosaurus roamed river valleys, forests, and floodplains. It may have hunted in pairs or small groups, coordinating to bring down larger prey. It likely used ambush tactics, striking from cover and retreating quickly if needed. Its speed allowed it to test its prey, to probe for weakness without committing to a dangerous fight. It fed on early ornithischians, young sauropodomorphs, and perhaps even scavenged when opportunity struck. It was an opportunist, not a specialist, and that was its strength. The success of predators like Dilophosaurus was rooted not in size, but in adaptability. Their bodies were modular, able to evolve rapidly in response to environmental pressures. Longer limbs for faster running, sharper teeth for more efficient killing, stronger tails for balance, forward-facing eyes for better depth perception. These traits could shift